Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Today, I want to talk to you briefly about BetterHelp. I am happy to announce that BetterHelp is a sponsor of this podcast. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional counselor. Listen, this is not a crisis line, nor is it self help, but it is professional counseling done securely online from the comfort of your own home. This service is available for clients worldwide, and you can even express your desire for a Christian therapist. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor and receive timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great matches, and they make it super easy to change counselors if needed. It is very affordable and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living your life happier today. So feel free to visit betterhelp.com to read testimonials. That's better, HELP, and join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. I have great news for you. Because you are a listener of this podcast, Empowered to Empower You, you get 10% off your first month. That's right. You get 10% off your first month, but you have to visit the link at https:// better help, HELP.com/Bewindi. I'll make sure to put this in the show notes. Okay, let's get to the show. Well, hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Empower to Empower You podcast. I am so honored that you came to this platform. I'm so excited for all of my listeners who've been with me since January 2020. If this is your first time joining the podcast, I want you to know that this podcast is about all things Jesus Christ and mental health, anything to help you change your mindset and help you change your perspective so that you can be the better version of yourself. For those of you who have been plugging in since 2021, you know that I have had an amazing lineup of guest speakers, and I am just so excited because y'all are getting a lot of value from the guests, and I'm so honored again to have another guest today. So I want to welcome you to episode number 57. If you have not, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. If you can, take a minute to just rate and review the podcast. That allows other people to find it, as well as share it with a friend, share it with a loved one. So I want to introduce to you Mr. Fredrick Gillam Jr. He is a licensed professional counselor, MHSP. For those of you who don't know what MHSP is, it is a designation of mental health services provider. He is licensed in the state of Tennessee and Mississippi, a licensed marital and family therapist in the state of Tennessee, the senior counselor consultant of Aesthetic Life Counseling Services in Memphis, Tennessee. Fredrick is a proponent of marriage and family. He understands how mental and behavioral health issues impact the lives of individuals and families. He has worked with families in a clinical setting for almost 10 years. His work with families include premarital, marital, and couples counseling. His experience includes working with specialized populations consisting of victims of domestic violence, trauma, and substance abuse. He utilizes evidence-based practices such as CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, and trauma therapy to address underlying issues such as grief, depression, anxiety, and PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Fredrick is a graduate of Harding School of Theology, where he earned a Master's of Arts in Counseling with a concentration in marriage and family therapy. Outside of the professional venue, Fredrick enjoys spending time with his wife and family. He is an ordained minister and is actively involved in his church and the community. He is an avid reader, appreciates a good movie, loves to exercise and be outdoors. Well, Mr. Fredrick, I am so honored to have you here today. Welcome,
Yes.
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bewindi. Thank you for having me on the
Yeah,
podcast today.
absolutely. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, tell us, look, how do we meet each other?
Well, I believe it was about 2017, 2018 at the latest.
Yeah.
Um, we were having dinner. I believe it was the Grove Grill on Poplar.
Right.
One of our colleagues, Karen Morgan, had
Yeah.
orchestrated. an event with the her place of business
Okay.
that was trying to bring together other therapists in the community
Mhm.
so that we can, partner and share resources, and
Yes.
also introduce us to what her place of employment had to offer from in the therapeutic arena as well. And
Yes.
so that was our first time meeting one another, and it was a small gathering. Karen had planned for, I guess, many more, but through other obligations,
Yes.
and as God would have it, it was you, myself, Karen, and Dion Catron,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we had such great dialogue and exchange
Mhm.
of information and an exchange of encouragement as well. Because as we know, in our field, we're carrying others' burdens, and we're trying to help them work through difficult issues. So in turn, it weighs on us. And
Yes.
so I think it was a very refreshing dinner and time for us to fellowship and to build a network and a partnership and also a friendship. And so I'm
Absolutely.
so grateful that we had that opportunity to meet. And especially you being a resource, I've been able to refer many individuals to you.
Same here. Well, it's so good to have you. I must say to the audience and those who are listening, it's so good to have a brother in Christ, that you can call and uh, we pray together, or whether it's just talking about sharing different information that could benefit both of us. It's so good to have a network of people that that you can learn from and grow in the field, as especially when we are like-minded when it comes to all things related to walking in the, our a Christian walk for sure. So the topic for today is maintaining mental health in marriage. And I love that you added in sickness and in health. Talk about why this topic, because this is definitely a passionate topic to you, and it is I'm sure you've seen, both of us have seen, this is such a relevant topic for people, especially in a time like this where a lot of marriages are drowning, a lot of marriages are not making, a lot of marriages are struggling, and mental health is so important. Not just, of course, spiritual health, but tell us about why you chose that topic for sure.
Definitely, as you mentioned in my bio, that I am a
Yeah,
proponent, of marriage and family. And so
yeah,
when we think of someone being a proponent, it means that they're advocating or they're fighting for something or they believe in something.
yeah,
And so I believe in marriage, I believe in family, and my foundation is Christ centered. Like you said, when we met during that dinner, I remember we had prayer before we left the restaurant.
yes.
And so I believe that this is not just a vocation, but it's a calling for me, therapist, because I am also an ordained minister.
Mhm.
And so God loves family. It's the first institution that
Mhm.
he created.
Mhm.
And so there are different things that come to batter or to, uh, I guess, bump up against the relationship, the marriage.
Yeah,
So we need to have some people that will stand in the gap, help maintain the integrity of marriages and relationships. So
yeah,
that's where people like you and myself come in, because when those vows are made, there's a dichotomy. We say in sickness and in health. We
mhm,
say for richer or for poorer. We
mhm,
say for better or for worse. So it's not the plus side or the good side that causes individuals to fold. It's
yeah,
those adverse sides when they're experiencing the sickness, when
mhm,
they're experiencing challenges, financial challenges,
yeah,
uh, or whatever it is that life may throw their way
mhm,
that would cause a relationship that at one time was very enjoyable
mhm,
to be depleted of that joy that was there prior to or present. So, so that's where I find a sense of purpose and fulfillment as a man of God, as a minister, as a counselor,
mhm,
and as a husband, as a person
yeah,
who's in a family,
yeah,
who was able to see challenges from my family of origin And so oftentimes we connect with something that we're passionate about because we have some experience that is also connected or tied to that. So,
Absolutely.
so my parents, they were an example. They weren't a perfect example because there is no such thing
Mm-mm.
as a perfect example.
Mhm.
But I was able to glean from their relationship what to do, what not to do,
Mhm.
and from that, and seeing them be able to triumph through the adversities that present in relationships, it was kind of like a burden for me to be able to help individuals succeed in relationships.
Absolutely. And I love that you said, not only have you seen a lot of things bump against marriage, but also remembering the covenant that is associated with marriage and the fact that we've learned so many things from our own parents, things that we do not want to repeat and things that we
Yes.
would like to repeat. So when it comes to mental health and the impact of marriage, talk about the impact and how what you've seen in your field and in your ministry.
Yeah, definitely. So that's another thing that uh, causes this vocation, this calling to
Yeah,
weigh heavy on me because
yeah,
from my family of origin, my grandmother often talked about the challenges that she was dealing with in her marriage to my grandfather. They eventually, I believe it was before I was born, they divorced. There was alcoholism on behalf of my grandfather, and then
mhm,
there was also domestic violence that he perpetrated on my grandmother. So we do know that kind of alcohol is a catalyst,
mhm.
um, to cause an individual. It doesn't necessarily have to, but it definitely can be associated with
Yeah.
aggressive behavior. So we had that component, the alcohol, there was domestic violence, and as a result, my grandmother suffered PTSD, post-traumatic stress, from that because here it is, I never witnessed what happened between the two of them, but
Yeah.
my grandmother often shared the stories
Mhm,
of how they got into it. And at one point, the straw that broke the camel's back is when she wound up in the hospital. And she would talk about how it damaged her self esteem that she could not even look in a mirror because she thought she was so ugly
yeah.
after that. And, so you have the physical abuse, you have the verbal
Mhm,
abuse that goes along with that.
mhm,
So I've been able to champion causes to help
mhm.
individuals come out of those situations. I've done some work on a military base in Millington, Tennessee, on the naval base as a domestic abuse victim advocate.
Mm,
And so I would help individuals, whether it was active duty military, dependent, or retirees who wanted to come out of those situations, whether they needed to construct a safety plan to ensure that they would not be in position to be harmed or their children, get an order of protection. Or just needed some support, someone just to be there with them to walk through the difficult places. And I've also worked on the side of the offenders as an education services facilitator. So I had a hybrid role. So with that, I would teach anger management, life skills, stress management,
right.
so forth and so on.
Absolutely.
So yes,
Such relevant work. And I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate your transparency. And I know the listeners appreciate that too, because this is something that's happening more and more and more. And
yes,
it's not new. It's not new. And even if we know that there is it's still a stigma, it's getting better, but there's still a stigma around mental health and what goes on in the home. And, I'm sure you've heard calls or you've had clients who continue to tell you, oh no, our family doesn't talk about that. There's
yes,
incest, there's DV, there's domestic violence, there's all kinds of things happening, but they never talked about it. Historically speaking, they never talked about it. And so when it comes to, you've done marital counseling, premarital counseling, and this is what you're doing even now.
yes,
How do you empower or encourage people to make sure that they're targeting? Because when people come to you or when people come for premarital counseling, they're not really thinking about I need to make sure my mental health is right. They don't really think about that. They're thinking about getting those 6 sessions done so they can get the certificate, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
really, they don't really know what they're walking into. Not every couple, of course, but how do you inspire people to really look into that? And talk about the process for that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that. And then, even to incorporate, like you said, covenant.
Yes,
So we know that when individuals are embarking upon marriage, it's a covenant between them and God, between the two of them and whoever is the witnesses
yes.
of their union. So,
Mhm.
and it's also contractual. So it is important that on the front end, as individuals are preparing for something that is so weighty and that it should have a long-term value, right? Because you make the vows and say, until death do you part.
Right.
So individuals would do themselves a service to engage in premarital counseling so that they can discover the things that may be going on with each other mentally, emotionally,
Yeah.
physically, statistically. So the premarital counseling is an opportunity for them to explore and to determine whether or not marriage is the next step. Sometimes individuals already have their mind made
Yes.
up
Yes.
that I'm just going through the motion. We have this date set and we're going to do this.
Yes.
So if it is determined that one of the individuals does have a mental health challenge, it does not mean that they cannot continue into marriage
Yes.
uh, because you can have any number of challenges, and still get married. But a person should be informed ahead of time as to what is happening with the individual that they plan to spend the rest of their life with. So it's important for individuals to do that self-assessment, that self-check, so that as they embark upon this long-term relationship, they can
Mhm.
enter in with their best self.
Yeah.
So if that means that I have some anger issues that I need to work on, then I need to do my due diligence to work through that. If it's anxiety, if it's
Yes.
depression, if it's bipolar, because first of all, you want to practice self-care so that you can be the best self that you can be for yourself.
Yep.
And if you're doing that, then you can be that best self for the person that you're in relationship with.
Absolutely.
But to not address the mental health issues and to go into a covenant, a contractual agreement that is supposed to be lifelong, um, definitely can be harmful for the individual and for the person that you're entering into the relationship with,
This is so,
marriage.
so good, Frederick. I really appreciate it. And if you see me, look, I'm taking notes as well to come back and ask you, but you know, I want to go back to something you said, and you didn't really say, but for people who are listening that may not necessarily be exposed to mental health, that is such a broad spectrum, right? I mean, we're talking about mental health within the spectrum from, depression all the way to schizophrenia. And in
Yes,
between that, there may be anxiety, anger issues, bipolar, borderline personality,
yes,
alcoholism, drug use. There's so much, or just
so much.
so much, or a PTSD because from military or from trauma. Trauma is a big one, or just some type of brief psychotic incident where this
Yes,
person may not have had a history, but maybe because they went through something so painful, or maybe they had a bad reaction from medications, or they had a series of injections,
yes,
so much, right? And so the thing that I love that you said, a person should be informed, they should inform their partner if they
yeah,
know that they're experiencing, or even if not experiencing, they have a history.
yes,
Even if while they're dating or courting and they know that this is the person that they're going to covenant with, even if they're not currently experiencing those symptoms, it is important to share the history
yes,
of the
yes,
mental health, and so that questions could be posed and the person who has experienced the mental health to be able to communicate even if it's in a safe environment, what like with a counselor, these are the symptoms. And if they cannot communicate it, to be able to have a therapist like yourself and myself, right? To talk about these are the possible symptoms of this mental health disorder. And
Yes.
as you said, what to expect and what do I need from my partner if I were to be triggered. Here's some things that may be triggering for me. This is so rich and
Yes.
also missed for a lot of people who are going to marriage and also already married. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I like what you said, like even if there's a history. So one
Yeah.
of the things that would help to uncover if there's some mental health challenges is doing a genogram.
Mm-hmm.
So a genogram, for those who are not familiar with the term,
Yeah.
it's a family tree,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit more detailed.
Yeah.
It uncovers patterns genetically, generational patterns,
Yeah.
and those patterns could be mental health challenges. Those patterns could be problems with alcohol or chemical substances.
Yeah.
Those patterns can also be healthy patterns. It could be individuals have a good work history within their family, like a family line of policemen or lawyers or therapists or preachers or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. So it's an opportunity to look at, because we all uh, weren't born into a bubble. We're connected,
Yes.
and we are a product of those that came before us. So sometimes we're predisposed to some things, and the thing that we're predisposed to can be the thing that brings about resiliency. You know,
Yes.
we can look at the family line and we can see where there's years of marriage, or we might see where there's patterns of divorce.
Yes.
And those are things that are important to uncover, to disclose.
Mhm.
It's just like if we're going to purchase a vehicle, you know, if they can have a Carfax report
Yes.
that tells you if the vehicle was involved in a storm, if it's been wrecked so many times,
Right.
then if we're going to enter into a long-term
Come
relationship,
on. Yes.
we should be able to talk about the history,
That's
you
good.
know, the family history, and uncover all aspects.
Mhm.
So I would also say a psychosocial assessment, you know, being able to talk about, have you ever had any trouble with the law? You
Yes.
know, those type of things. You know, have you been divorced before? Have you
Mhm.
ever been physically violent in a relationship? You know, what is your work history? What type of credit do you have?
Yes.
You know, all of those things are relevant. And
Mhm.
even when it comes down to spirituality, what are your beliefs?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
And how
being
do you
able to be,
respond? Yeah.
yeah,
No,
because
no, go ahead.
when we don't address those issues, they don't just disappear. So I would say, in preparation, individuals need to, for one, take their time. Don't rush into it,
So
and
good.
you know, be diligent about exploring, you know, the life of your partner and your partner's family, because it's not just the two individuals coming together, but it's actually two families that are coming together, and
Absolutely.
being able to look at that, because you know, some are under the notion that, well, I'm not marrying the family, I'm just marrying the person. Well, you can't, you know, get the person without getting the
That's
family
the
and
family.
the
Right.
history
Right.
that goes along with it.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
so I would say that would be helpful. There's this guy,
Mhm.
Dr. John Van Epp,
Mhm.
and he has what we call the relationship attachment model. And there are
Mhm.
5 stages that John Van Epp talks about in this relationship attachment model. He
Mhm.
says the first thing you need to do, stage one, is get to know the person.
Mhm.
Spend as much time as you can getting to know the person. He
Mhm.
said, because stage two, you can determine whether or not you can trust the person.
Mhm.
So the more time that you spend getting to know them,
Mhm.
you can determine if you can trust them. Then stage three is to rely. If you can trust them, then you can rely upon the person.
Yeah.
And so he says, spend a lot of time getting to know them to determine whether or not you can trust them. Then if you can trust them, then you can rely upon them.
Yes.
Then he talks about commitment. You know, trust, rely, and commit. Then you can commit. And the last stage he talks about is physical touch. He says, whenever you do these things out of order, you can expect problems to occur. So if you begin to commit to someone that you don't know, if you rely on someone that you can't trust, if you begin touching someone that you don't know, that you can't trust, then it is going to lead to heartache and to disappointment.
So true.
So, in another thing, he wrote a book, How to Avoid Marrying a Jerk or Jerkette.
Ooh. Say that one again. How to avoid
How to
marrying.
avoid marrying a jerk or jerkette.
That's good. As you're speaking, this is so relevant. And, it also raises up the issue that a lot of these things are not considered before marriage because people are so focused on the emotional aspect of it, or so blindsided by love or perception
Yes.
of love, right?
Yes.
So I know there are people listening like, oh my gosh, I didn't do these things. And so let's say a married person is listening to you today, and they're in it, and they were bamboozled. They did not see the mental health issues of their spouse. And now they're in this relationship. They're trying to be patient. The wife or the husband, one of them has decided to do his or her work, whoever it is. One of them has decided to do his or her work, but they're struggling because they see the mental health issues. I'm sure you've heard the term gaslighting and manipulative behaviors and all other things, right? What would you say to a spouse who's really struggling and they notice the mental health aspect of their spouse, but they really don't know what to do or how to navigate that? Hello there, please. We had some technical difficulties. I hope that you are enjoying this interview with Fredrick Gillam. Sometimes technological issues happen, but for those of you who have really been listening, I just hope that this is adding value to you. And feel free to, again, don't forget to rate and review the podcast. But if you're just chiming on, just give us some grace. We're talking about maintaining mental health in marriage. And a lot of things that Fredrick had talked about is mental health issues. And so we thank you again for
Okay,
your grace.
there we go.
He is back. And so we're going to continue with
All
the
right.
podcast. All right, you there? I was,
Yeah, I lost connection. I think my internet is getting spotty, so hopefully we'll be able to
yes,
continue through with no
absolutely.
problems.
Well, and that's okay. I think I was able to tell the people that we had a little technical issue. But really quickly, did you hear the first part? Let me repeat the first part of the question just in case.
Okay.
Let's say a couple, lots of couples are listening to this interview right now, this podcast, and maybe this one of the spouse, the couple who is hearing you, and they're like, oh my goodness, I did not consider these things before marriage, and now that I notice that I have my own mental health issues. Maybe one of the spouse is saying, you know what, I have my own mental health issues, maybe because of stress or anxiety, and they're doing the work, but their other spouse that has a mental health issues, whether it's alcoholism or maybe because of their mental health issues, they're choosing to cope in unhealthy ways, pornography, masturbation, etc. What would you say to that spouse who's doing the work but doesn't know how to navigate? You can't force people to do the work, right? Doesn't know how to
Absolutely.
navigate with their spouse. They notice the signs, but they don't know what to do. How would you encourage them? What would you say to them?
Definitely support is always in order
Hmm.
because you can't do it by yourself. You're not in it alone. But the first line of business is to take care of self. That is what is first and foremost in the person's control, is to be able
Yes.
to take care of themselves and their own issues.
Yes.
I always say that personal growth precedes relational growth.
Per-
So
ooh, say that again. Personal.
personal growth
Mhm.
precedes relational growth,
Explain that.
which means that I shouldn't be doing it for the relationship first. I should be doing this for myself first. So whatever tools that I'm gaining, whatever resource that I'm utilizing, I have to utilize it for me first. Just like when we're on that airplane and they say that in the event of emergency, when the oxygen mask come down, put it on yourself
Yes.
and then put it on your partner. Oftentimes what happens is people are trying to fix their partner.
Yes.
And when their partner is not doing the things that they want them to do, then they stop doing the thing that's necessary for themselves because the motivation is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are doing it from a motivation that I want to be better, so it doesn't matter if you
Hello, y'all. We're having some technical issues. I know y'all know how it is with the internet, but just give us a couple minutes. I apologize for these technical issues for sure. But I love what you just said. I love that Fredrick just said personal growth precedes relationship growth. Personal growth precedes relationship growth. Personal growth precedes. I'm saying it again for somebody to write that down. So as you're doing your development, you're not doing it specifically for the relationship, but you're doing it, or you're not doing it to, based on the other person, but you're doing it, even if your work will impact the other person, but you're doing it to help yourself first. Because if we're doing it for other people, we tend to become resentment because the other person is not changing based on our expectations. So I really, really love that. What a great nugget to take away from this interview. Again, this is maintaining mental health in marriage. That y'all just give me a minute or two. Let me see if Fredrick is able to log back in. But I hope y'all are enjoying this for sure. I really do. This is so good, so enriching. So he is back on. So
yeah,
we should not
let,
be
let,
too much longer. So I hope that the internet will cooperate. The Wi-Fi will cooperate.
I know.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay,
So
let's
I love that you said, personal growth precedes relationship growth, and definitely, understanding that if this is happening, to make sure that the person who's doing the work, even if they notice their spouse needs to address their mental health, but to model taking care of themselves, to support
yes.
in a loving and compassionate way, not to bark orders, you need to do this, but to be loving and supportive, and to model that as well.
A good example is a lot of times couples present with communication problems, communication issues.
Mhm.
So if couples are given a tool to enhance and to promote assertive communication, if both are invested in personal growth, then they will continue to use the tool even when they may notice that the other person is not.
Yes.
So what often happens is one individual, when they see that the other person is not utilizing the tool, then they will stop and revert back to the old pattern.
Hmm.
But if you have a personal investment and you recognize that I am also contributing to the communication breakdown,
Yes.
and that if I make this personal change, even if my partner doesn't change,
Y'all, I apologize for this. This technical issues is really an issue right now. This technical stuff is really an issue right now. This y'all are gonna hear the rest of this interview. Thank y'all for being patient. Thank y'all for being patient. We will get through with this. I so thank y'all for your grace and for hanging out and for having taken notes. I hope that y'all are reflecting and enjoying what y'all are hearing, because this is really, really good content. And I hope that married couples as well as singles are singles with a desire to be married, because not every person wants to be married, but singles who desire marriage and those who are on their way to marriage, as well as those who are married. Mental health is very important, as well as spiritual health, because we really cannot thrive in our purpose if we're not taking responsibility of those things. The Lord wants you and myself and me well. The Bible says that he prospers, and he prospers you. He wishes above all things. He said, I wish above all things that you prosper in health, even as your soul prospers. That means God wants you to prosper. He wants us to prosper in our spirits. He wants us to prosper in our minds. He wants us to prosper in our bodies. He wants us to prosper in our marriages. So I love one of the points that I heard him say is that, to not address these things, to not address mental health to your spouse or to your future spouse, to not talk about that, even if you know that you're struggling with that, it can cause a lot of
Okay.
harm. So
I
he is
think that
back, y'all.
information is good now. I connected to a mobile hotspot.
Okay, and we'll be wrapping up in for sure. But go ahead and finish up the example that you're giving, and I'm going to move on for sure.
Okay. So basically, uh, if individuals would first, have that personal motivation, that the
Yes,
personal growth precedes relational growth,
yes.
then also be able to utilize support, because sometimes what happens is the other spouse who needs the help uh, is not taking into consideration what that other spouse is saying. So you need other people that will be able to be in sync on one accord to say the same thing. Other people who recognize, whether that is the healthcare professional, a
Mhm,
therapist,
mhm.
a minister, a family member, a friend, someone else, because sometimes it takes the person to hear it from someone else before it registers uh, the seriousness of the matter and how important it is for them to get help for themselves. So an
Yes.
individual definitely should solicit help from others to help them to support that other individual.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm believing that this Wi-Fi just sticks for the rest
Oh
of this.
yeah, it will. Now I got a hotspot going from my phone, so yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, this is really, really good. And I was kind of giving some nuggets, kind of reiterating some of the things that you were saying in our commercial breaks, in our
Okay.
commercial breaks with the Wi-Fi. So definitely, this is great. I'm so glad that you're here, Fredrick, because I know you are definitely helping a lot of people. That's super important. And I love the fact personal growth precedes relationship growth. And the other thing you said earlier is to not address it, to know that you have mental health concerns and to not address it with your partner, current, future, especially somebody that you're courting on the way to marriage. I'm not saying just go around telling every boyfriend, every person, when on your way to marriage, if you're not talking about these things, it can definitely cause some harm. So you've talked, that was a great segue into the next thing that you just answered in terms of ways to support each other in marriage when it comes to mental health. So to kind of wrap this up, tell us in terms of if people wanted to work with you. Number one, who are your ideal clients? Who would you prefer to work with, and who do you work with, and and also the second part to that is how can people work with you?
Okay. So, of course, as you mentioned, it's important for people to know the credentials that a therapist carries, whom they're working with. And I'm a licensed professional counselor in Tennessee and in Mississippi with the designation of mental health service provider, which means I can also diagnose. Um, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Tennessee. If someone wanted to get in contact with me, I am on Psychology Today. So they would go to psychologytoday.com and look under the therapist finder and just type in my name, Fredrick with one E, Fredrick Gillam with one I, Gillam. And then they would be able to see my profile. I do take insurance. I'm paneled with Cigna at this time, and then also ComPsych. And of course, self-pay for those who do not have those particular insurances. And then another thing, as far as the individuals that I work with, of course, premarital, I do premarital counseling. I also do couples counseling. The distinction between the two is sometimes individuals are not necessarily seeking to go to the next level in marriage. They're just in relationship. They're trying to figure out, do they want to continue in their dating relationship?
Mhm.
So they don't know if marriage is a prospect or not. They want to work through some issues.
Mhm.
Couples counseling, premarital, and of course, marital therapy. And then I
Mhm.
also do family counseling.
Oh, great.
So family can consist of a husband, wife, and their children. It can consist of a parent and a child or siblings.
Mhm.
Normally 3 to 4 people. Sometimes I have done more. It becomes a little bit more challenging the more people that you are working with. So ideally, 3 with 4 at the max.
Mhm.
I also see adolescents. So typically about 12 and up. For me, I normally don't work with the younger children, but I do have a colleague in the office that does.
Mhm.
Work with individuals dealing with trauma. I am EMDR, which is a trauma therapy, EMDR trained. Um, Also, of course, work with individuals with mood disorders, anxiety, depression, substance abuse. I do have a history of working with individuals in that capacity. Um, what else? And that's pretty much, I think, covers everything.
Do you still provide groups or any, are you currently providing groups for any person?
I'm not doing any groups, but it's you know coming.
It's in the works. Yes, yes.
Yes, it's
And
in the works.
are your services virtual or and or a combination of in office? Okay,
Combination of both.
that's good to
So
hear.
those who come into office, we are uh, adhering to the protocols. We're wearing masks during the sessions. We do temperature checks and all of those things. We want to make sure that people are safe. We're practicing the physical distancing within the office as
Mhm.
well. And then I
That's
also offer virtual.
great, great. Well, I am so honored to have you here. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, Fredrick? Any last words of encouragement? Anything that you wish to add to provide value for all related to the topic, maintaining mental health in marriage?
Yeah, I just want to say from a relational aspect that, you know, when a therapist connects with their work, like myself, I'm married. My wife and I have been married for 26 years.
That is amazing.
So
Yes,
thank you. Yes, to
yes,
God be the glory.
absolutely.
And we've been
Celebrate that.
together, I believe it's 32 years, because we were high school sweethearts. So we dated for 6 years
That's awesome.
prior. So aside from having the knowledge, from the academic perspective, but knowing personally,
Mhm.
about, what it takes to work through issues and challenges that come about in marriage and even in family. Um, my mother, she had a late in life diagnosis of bipolar, so I understand those things. So there are personal connections that I have to my work outside of the clients that I see as well. So, and then everything is motivated from that Christ-centered place, who I am as a man of God. So no respecter of persons.
Mhm.
I'm a resource to whoever it is that can utilize my services. So I take an approach of unconditional positive regard, and I find great joy in just being a part of that process. Being privileged
Yeah.
to sit with people in very difficult places and hopefully offering something that can inspire some hope as they're traveling on this journey.
Absolutely. As you were speaking, and we may have to have you. I know for sure you will be back because things like there's so many people struggling in their marriages when it comes to infidelity, and that's a whole nother conversation. And seeing the hope, maybe talking about how can marriages gain hope or restore from
Yes,
those
yeah,
incidents? Or, what does it look like when marriages are not able to restore from infidelity?
yes,
That's
because
what I thought.
sometimes,
Yes.
yes.
Mhm.
And then, couples don't realize it, but there's a thing called infidelity PTSD,
Yes.
where individuals actually um, are reeling from the effects of
Absolutely.
experiencing an affair in
Yeah.
their relationship. And so, sometimes one the partner who was the affair partner wants the other person to heal quickly,
Yes.
but because there is a PTSD associated with that infidelity, that can prolong the healing process.
That's so
And
true.
so being able to help individuals work through those things can be very insightful as well.
Absolutely.
And to say this too, that bringing individuals back to the covenant that they made, the vows, because oftentimes the vows get lost in translation.
Mhm.
So the vows are kind of like they're preloaded. So it's not for better or for better. It's not for richer or for richer. It's not in health and in health. It's for better or for worse. And so when you experience those different extremes, there are resources in place. Of course, for me, I say God first. He is the source. And then therapists, the church, in all family members and all kind of support are resources. But if individuals are motivated to resolve the issue, practice forgiveness, and make changes, because you can forgive, but there has to be some corresponding changes
Yep.
that are made. If individuals are willing, then they can work through it, and their relationship can be even better
Mhm.
than it was prior to whatever it was that caused the decline in their relationship.
Absolutely. That is the key. Well, I know if we get started on that, we will not end the podcast. So, well, look,
Yes, and
I'm
I
so
just want to
glad.
thank you. I tell you, I truly thank God for, you being a friend, a dear sister in the body of Christ, a co-therapist, and a co-laborer.
Yes.
And thank you for the privilege of allowing me to grace your podcast on
Yeah.
today.
I am so honored to have you. Well, y'all, I know that you are going to be blessed. This podcast is going to add so much value to your life. Again, you heard how you can get in touch with Fredrick, but what is your number, Fredrick, if people need to call you?
901
Uh,
620 9120.
620-9120. Definitely
Correct.
awesome. And your website, people can they'll get your information when they go to psychology.
Psychologytoday.com.
Definitely.
Yes,
Y'all
ma'am.
are welcome to call him. For those of you who are looking for marital counseling, premarital counseling, family therapy, are you currently taking any clients? I know
I
we've been
am. I
winding.
am. So tell them, yeah, give me a call. If they don't get me, leave a voice message, and I will get back with them promptly.
Great, 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 awesome. Well, it was such a pleasure to have you here today, Fredrick, and we'll
All
definitely
right.
be back. Okay,
I will look forward to that. Thank you
awesome.
so much. Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.